Coming up next on The Voice of Alabama Politics, the gaming bill passes out of committee. Also, the V-Team takes a look at the failed special session. And this week, Mike Hubbard showed his true colors. And they are 50 shades of cruel. All this and much, much more coming up next on The V.
The Voice of Alabama Politics with your host, Bill Britt, and the V-Team with Claire Austin, Susan Britt, Jack Campbell, Baron Coleman, Charlana Spencer, and special reports with Jonathan Barbie. Now, the #1 political show in Alabama, The V.
Welcome to The Voice of Alabama Politics, where we tackle the tough issues so you have the hard facts. I'm your host, Bill Britt, and as always, I'm joined by the V-Team. Welcome all.
Hello, guys.
One of the most least productive weeks, I think, in the history of Alabama politics. Nothing seemed to be accomplished. They did, however, get Senator Dale Marsh's omnibus gaming bill out of committee, but it didn't go much further, did it, Susan?
It didn't. It pretty much stopped dead there. It had pretty good support in that committee meeting. There were only two senators, Tripp Pittman and Melson, that were against it. There were more proponents there for the public meeting than there were opponents. In fact, Dr. Joe Godfrey had to speak twice to make up the difference. So, but it doesn't look like it's going anywhere.
Baron, what's the deal? Marsh can't get 21 votes in the Senate?
I don't think he can right now. I don't know if it's that the Senate isn't in the mood for gaming, if there's not the urgency that Senator Marsh anticipated there would be. I don't think even the senators are convinced at this point. I think there's been a mood shift over the last 6 months or so. I don't think anyone is really convinced that it's going to be bad if the budget is substantially cut. I think they've cried wolf so many times, even the legislators themselves are just not convinced it's going to be a bad day if they have to cut a reduced budget.
We keep hearing that it's not done yet, that they're going to bring it back at some point. This foundation that's been put together, the Alabama Jobs Foundation, is continuing to grow and work behind the scenes. Jack, you got any positive outlook for it?
Well, you're right. You haven't heard from the foundation. And as we talked about earlier before the show, I think they're trying to keep their powder dry to see what direction it's going in. But it's kind of amazing to me that they've had this much time between the adjournment last few, several weeks ago and now to get their act together. But honest to God, there's so many different moving parts, and none of them are really going anywhere.
Well, I tell you, one of the biggest shocks was earlier this week when Mike Hubbard gave the order to cut over $150 million from the Medicaid budget, which would effectively cast 300,000 people, children and old people, off Medicaid. Baron, that was one of the most poisoned political moves I've ever seen.
It was cold-hearted and cruel. It would take a quarter of the money, essentially, and all of the federal matching money that comes with it out of the Medicaid budget, essentially shutting down nursing homes, ending care for the elderly, poor, and mostly children. Most of the people on this Medicaid are children whose only sin in life is being born into a poor family. They can't help that.
And it's not like, we can't do away with Medicaid. It needs to be fixed, but we can't do away with it.
I don't know that the federal government will let us do away with Medicaid. They may come in and demand we spend more on it than we actually have to spend. But I think it was a political gamesmanship move of Mike Hubbard. He wanted to sort of punish the Democrats for abandoning his efforts to raise taxes, because I think he thinks it would harm his people the most. But what people aren't considering is a lot of children's doctors, hospitals, rural hospitals depend on this to stay open so that wealthy people have access to those same doctors and hospitals. Right. And so it ends care for everybody if you yank the rug out from the poor.
Jack, all over the state, there was just an immediate outcry. It went fast and far.
Well, this underscores how petty the speaker is. The fact that the Democrats weren't on board with everything he wanted. He's going to punish them by taking $156 million out of Medicaid. That's incredible.
And that magnifies out to 550 by the time you get the
Get
match.
the federal match, yeah, absolutely.
It almost seemed racist to me. You know, they didn't even ask John Knight or any of those guys to vote for those taxes. They just automatically assumed they would.
They just thought, well, they're, Democrats, they're, African American, they'll just vote for taxes automatically as though it's some sort of thing they always do. That's not necessarily so.
I don't think you can take John Knight for granted. I just don't think he plays that way.
Well, they have been for the last 4 or 5 years. It's nice of the Democrats to finally wake up and realize they've been used as a doormat and start pushing back with what little bit of influence they have. Turns out they have more than they thought.
And I'm amazed at the number of Republicans that fell on the Hubbard sword.
Yeah, I was shocked at that. What they originally passed it, originally it was defeated. Then they came back and got the extra votes they needed. It was embarrassing, really, that you got that many people. I wouldn't want to run. I mean, they had Connie Rowe carrying that cigarette tax. I mean, Connie Rowe is not somebody you would have thought would have carried a cigarette tax for these guys.
Unless she stopped smoking.
Last time I saw her, she was puffing away. I mean,
At least she's not a hypocrite.
No, she's not.
Right,
She's
she's
not.
taxing herself. That's all right.
I mean, I'm all for that. I mean, I'm not against the cigarette tax, but I just couldn't imagine somebody, they ran against her.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, Hubbard and them
There
tried to
are
kill
plenty
her.
of people in the GOP who are elderly. There are plenty of people in the GOP who are poor. This is going to come back to haunt these Republicans.
Yeah.
Well,
and
it
they have to
should.
run again.
It should.
It should.
And let's not forget about there were 13 or 14 people in the legislature that didn't have the anatomy to cast a vote either way. They voted present. Again, we used to assault and attack Barack Obama for his state legislative record of voting present all the time. And these guys sat on the side. Their constituents sent them down here and paid them to sit on the sidelines and not cast a crucial vote on the future of Medicaid. No, thank you.
Well, this session was an abject failure. The Republicans have a supermajority. They could pass anything they want. They can't lead right now, can they, Susan?
The houses can't agree. The austerity budget came back up on Friday from the Senate, came out of committee, and, because they can't even agree on which way to go, to cut the Medicaid or to, do the austerity budget. So it's just confusion everywhere.
Right back where we were, Jack. Right where we've got the same budget now facing the governor, facing the House as we had before. I mean,
Essentially the same, yeah.
Yeah.
And a word for Governor Bentley, stop being cute. Stop being cute. You were cute trying to surprise everybody, call them into session early. Well, this is what you get when you didn't give them the time you agreed they should have to settle their disputes and try to get something put together. Now, if you're going to veto this new budget that looks remarkably like the one you just vetoed, don't be cute and wait until the last minute to call them back in. Give them a full 30 days to come in and get this thing worked out.
I mean, we've got to stop acting like, leaders and not little kids. I mean, this is like a dang food fight.
Well, the tension in the State House right now is unbelievable. They're in each other's faces. They're not speaking to each other. They're tabling each other's motions. It's a free-for-all.
People tell me they've never seen it so disorganized and coming apart at the seams.
It's an unbelievable atmosphere. One of the reasons I don't go over there. I'm not welcome.
You don't want to add to the chaos,
No,
Jack?
not at all.
All right, well, we're going to leave it right there. You're watching The V, the voice of Alabama politics. We'll be right back.
The V is sponsored by Spot On Strategies Group.
Sadly, this happens too often in families with autistic children.
First nightmare, their child wanders off, disappears, and is nowhere to be found.
Where her body was found just a couple hours ago.
An autistic boy wanders away from home and dies.
Welcome back to the voice of Alabama politics. Barron, you and I have talked about this. You've had Daniel Smith on your radio. What we've seen lately is some academic reports that have been issued calling the retirement systems of Alabama to question, saying that it's insolvent, that it's going out of business, it's scaring the heck out of some retirees. Now, Dr. David Bronner has come back and said, look, these reports are absolutely false. They're based on assumptions from 2009. Dr. Bronner has been very adamant about that these do not reflect the current numbers. You've looked at it. What do you see? Well,
I think it's fraudulent, and I'm ashamed Troy University's associated with these guys, to be honest with you. Daniel Smith, when he came on the program, seemed like a perfectly nice guy, but he's wrong. And he's not just wrong. If you want to have a debate over the morality of whether or not the state should be in the retirement planning business for its state employees, have that discussion. Have that discussion on the libertarian angle. Should the state be involved in this? Is this the proper role and function of government? But to flat out blatantly lie, manipulate statistics, and act like it's going broke or that they're somehow shady or underhanded, they're saying that they're using fraudulent accounting practices or shady accounting practices. It's the same accounting practice every public entity in the United States uses. Last I checked, the United States was the leader in the world's economy. You know, this is not some underhanded accounting tactic. It's the GASB. It's the approved public accounting standard for the United States. And not only that, to go out and act like it's somehow broke, or they use this thing that there's an annual payment from the legislature to shore up RSA. That's something that's been going on for 75 years. You know, this isn't new. Now, Daniel Smith needs to be honest. The people that are pushing this, the people that are financing their effort to push this, are the people who realize there are trillions of dollars locked up in these public pension funds around the country, and they want to get their money-grubbing little hands on it for their financial planning buddies. That's what this movement is about. And they'll lie, cheat, steal, do whatever they have to do to get their hands on it.
Susan, you've looked at this, you've looked at the finances, and you've looked at the people who are financing these studies. I mean, what are you seeing out there?
I'm seeing data that's a little old is one of the things I'm seeing. You can't look at what they're looking at and look at RSA today and see the same figures. It just doesn't work out that way.
The amazing thing to me, Jack, is that the Troy University seat, as well as the seat at a lot of these other centers, they're financed by people like Charles and David Koch, ExxonMobil, Walmart. I mean, the Koch brothers alone fund 163 universities to produce studies similar to this.
Sure.
I mean, this is propaganda on the right, like we used to have propaganda on the left.
Absolutely, and their tentacles are pretty far-reaching into Alabama. And you may not agree with Bronner. You may think he's the Donald Trump of Alabama. He is a little edgy sometimes, but I think his success overall has been splendid. And I think people that are participating in RSA are very happy with what they've seen. And I think a lot of it could be blamed on the way the economy tanked.
Well, it did. But the thing that bothers me is that we have these faux studies pretending to be academic studies. I mean, how can we trust this stuff anymore?
Well, they say that they're underfunded because if you look out, they have so many more liabilities than they do current assets. But consider your own home mortgage. I mean, you might owe $150,000 on your home mortgage, and you might only have $1,300 in the bank, but you have a recurring revenue stream.
Right.
And so you'll be able over time to pay off that home mortgage, and you're not going to go broke. You know you're going to stay employed. Well, consider the taxing power of the state of Alabama and the fact that state employees are compelled to put 7.5% of their income into this. So as long as you have an employee base and you have taxing power, it's not going to go broke.
Well, I heard somebody say the other day that no one would have a defined benefit plan. You can buy those every day of the week.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's on an annuity.
Yeah, a lot of people have defined benefit plans.
Yeah.
I want to get to this next thing. We went to the hearing for Victoryland at Judge Shashy's court. And I'm telling you, if you didn't have any fun when you were there, you had to be John Kackelman. John Kackelman, the representative of the Attorney General's office, did not have a good day, did he, Susan?
No, he did not have a good day at all. Everything started out pretty good, and then Kackelman decided he wanted to argue with the judge in his own court. Finally came to the point that the judge just looked at him and said, "You don't understand what you're talking about. Quit asking me the same question." It was hysterical. Even Barron was watching Josh Moon on Twitter, and he couldn't believe how hysterical
I was going
it
to say, Josh Moon did such a great job with the Montgomery Advertiser tweeting the hilarity out. Yeah. You called me and said, "Is it really that funny?"
Oh yeah, I wanted to go to the hearing, but I was tired. I went home and I thought, well, I'll just follow along and see if anyone's talking about it on Twitter. I tapped into Josh Moon's Twitter feed, and so when it was over, I called you. I said, "Was it as funny as he said it was?"
Well, I mean, Shashi looked at Keckleman and said, "You and I need to take a field trip. Why don't you get one of those SUVs you guys have with the tinted out windows? And, we'll go down there." And Charlotte said, well, you make sure you turn the siren on for it.
Yeah,
I mean, it was just, Jim, Bill Espy got up one time and said, "Okay, it's over. I'm walking out. We won."
Well, I mean, I felt bad for John Keckleman, a nice young man, way out of his depth on that day. We just don't know how the judge is going to rule. Sounds like he doesn't want to rule at all to me, doesn't do you, Judge?
I saw him at Publix the other night, and I said, "Hey, Billy, when are you going to?" "All right." I took that to mean I better not say another damn word.
Yeah, you don't want to get the judge quoting in public. We got about a minute left, I think. Governor Bentley wanted to get a $50 million bond issued through the special session.
He's 0 for the session.
Sounds like mayonnaise at Subway.
That's what he felt like, a Subway sandwich going down.
Everything he wanted was a failure. Nothing passed.
Yeah, the crazy thing, we found out that there was a $110 million bond to build one of these luxury hotels there 16 years ago, and nobody knows where the money is anymore.
When was the last time a governor in the same party as the ruling majority in each house didn't get one bill passed? Has that ever happened?
I don't know. That's a good question.
That's a good question. Well, look at that.
Granted, it's a special session, but he got nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean...
well, he didn't get a whole lot out of a regular session either.
No, but I mean, it really is shocking. I mean, and again, we all like the governor.
Sure.
But he has handled this very amateurish. He has made everybody mad.
Yeah.
And now they're just saying, we don't care.
He chose poorly.
He chose poorly.
To quote Indiana Jones.
Yeah.
Well, and the rumor is now he's going to call them back in 8 days before October 1st to put the pressure on them for the dispatch. I just don't think this is wise. You're putting too much pressure on these people to try to come to an agreement, and all they're doing is arguing.
Yeah, if he does that, we're going to go into the year without a budget, and they'll be paying people in script. Like
I saw his legislative aide at dinner the other night and went to speak to him, and he didn't want to talk about anything.
Yeah, nobody wants to talk about that.
It was just like high pleasantries, and that was it.
All right, we're going to leave it right there. You're watching The V, the voice of Alabama politics. We'll be right back. Welcome back to The V, the voice of Alabama politics. Welcome, Claire.
Good morning. Glad I can make it with y'all.
You are too, finally.
Y'all just have this love relationship, don't you?
For many moons.
That's
For
right.
many moons.
fact, I mooned her last night.
Moonshine, you mean?
Moonshine. Well, you know, speaking of somebody who could probably use a drink, that'd be Mike Hubbard. He has not had a good special session. His power has been all over the place. He's tried to exercise it, and it hadn't worked as well as it used to. People are just leaving that ship. One of the things we were told, and I learned this straight from legislators that have this information, he is trying to get this new campaign finance law changed, several of them, but one is where he can use his campaign finance to pay for his legal fees. We've discovered there might be some conflicts there. Barron, you pointed that out before.
Yeah, they did get a law passed that said that you could use it for legal fees under certain circumstances that seem bizarre to me. But the conflict is there is a statute that says you cannot use campaign money for personal things, to make it a personal thing of value. And so what they're doing now is they want to sponsor yet another piece of legislation that would exempt it from being considered a thing of value. Go ahead and make those mental pretzels in your head and try to figure out how using campaign money is not a thing of value for personal use. I think the Ethics Commission needs to look into this. I think the federal government needs to look into it. The IRS needs to look into it. There are all kinds of problems with this. I mean, from top to bottom.
I talked to a tax guy the other day. I mean, a top CPA type guy. And he says, "How is this not taxable?"
It is taxable. It has to be.
Well, what happened was they passed this bill during the regular session this spring.
Right.
And they forgot about a couple of these little loopholes. Now they're nervous, so he's going back in, and this is not a good time for him to try to find friends that are going to fix things like that for him right now.
Well, I mean, that's a hard horse to get back in the barn, isn't it, Jack?
Never heard that, Bill, but that's right. I mean, how is a $5,000 check to the Mike Hubbard campaign that he uses to pay legal defense not a thing of value?
And not taxable.
Yeah.
And how is it not receiving something of value from a lobbyist?
Right. I mean,
when the understanding is you'll give it to me and I'll give it to lawyers.
Sure.
I mean, think of the Barry Moore situation.
Right.
$25,000 in, $25,000 to the lawyers.
Yeah.
How is that not accepting a thing of value from a lobbyist for personal use?
And I mean, we've looked at hundreds of thousands of dollars that went into Mike Hubbard's campaign, and we know darn well it came from a top donor and been boom right over here to J. Mark White.
Right.
I mean, it's just, what's your word, Claire?
Egregious.
It's crazy.
I wouldn't want to be the lobbyist that serves as pass-through entities either, frankly.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to have anything to do with this. And if I was a lobbyist and I had a client that had contributed to this, I think I'd be picking up the phone and say, hey, word on the street is we need to probably lawyer up and look into finding a way out of this thing.
Yeah, I mean, you're just you're probably one phone call away from Matt Hart. I mean, it just keeps getting dirtier, doesn't it?
It does. I'm really
amazing.
Utterly amazed at the audacity of this guy to just in your face at the voters, at the people who give him money. They're scared not to. And as Barron and I said, what are they scared of? Especially these members who vote for whatever he asks them to vote for. What are they scared of if they say, no, Mike, I can't be with you on that? So they're going to lose their committee chairmanship? Big deal. I wouldn't want to be on any committee over there right now.
Well,
a bunch of fools.
Chances are you're going to get subpoenaed before a grand jury and have to lawyer up.
Well, things are not as they have been in the last 5 years.
What
They're
are you
not
saying?
Well, I mean, that is exactly the way it's been for the last 5 years. I don't see it so much that way this particular session.
Yeah, I mean, it's been chaos. Both houses have been chaos. One of the things that happened this last week is Hubbard's attorney, J. Mark White, filed a motion to continue the case for an extension.
Shocking? That's a shocker to anyone?
Not shocking. We saw it coming, but the way they did it was they twisted the words of the judge and basically made it sound like the judge was asking for more time. I don't think Judge Walker's going to take kindly to that. Do you?
Judge Walker may be one of the 2 or 3 most respected people in all of Lee County. There's not a lawyer over there that doesn't basically revere the man. He's got deep, rich ties to the community. I don't think he's going to suffer Mike Hubbard's shenanigans too long and put up with it. It's one thing to say, Judge, we're just not ready. It's another thing to try to make the judge look foolish in front of the media, in front of the opposing parties, in front of the courthouse personnel. Mark White is really walking a very, very thin line here.
I mean, Claire, they've had a year. I mean, it'll be a year by the time we get to trial, if we get to trial, which is not looking real good.
Well, yeah, I mean, but as Barron has mentioned, I mean, all Mark White is trying to do is, you know, throw one more PR roadblock, dig up one more thing, delay. That's been his whole deal, is delay things, and to try to insult the Attorney General's office, the prosecutors, and the judge. And I just think in the end, that is not going to bode well for his client, Mike Hubbard.
Well, you know, Mark White all along has been saying, we're anxious to go to trial. We want our day in court to prove that this is a political witch hunt, and every chance he gets, he pushes it off, files another motion, wanting another hearing on some BS charge that he's drummed up. And so far, it hadn't worked to his advantage, and to me, makes him look like a fool.
Well, we're only about 8 days away from the scheduled August 17th hearing, which is a pretrial conference. I mean, can you give people an idea of what usually happens at something like that?
Pretrial conferences are pretty pro forma. I mean, any loose ends, they try to wrap up, or at least set a date in the very near future that they can wrap up. Make sure everybody's good to go. All discoveries changed hands. Just again, make sure that the timing is right, how long they expect each side's case to go. It's not usually not a tough hearing. Now, they could end up going a few days because there are several motions, but you know, every motion needs to be at least addressed before you go to trial. And this is your last chance to sort of say, these are the motions, Judge, that are still outstanding. We need to get these wrapped up.
Well, we got about a minute. We've got prosecutorial misconduct. We've got that Van Davis and Matt Hart were never properly appointed. I mean,
those will be easy for the judge to dismiss. The ones that'll be a little more difficult are the ones where you get into discovery issues.
Right.
And we'll just have to wait and see what the facts are behind those.
You know, the terrible thing is we're bucking up against football season here. There will not be any rooms in Auburn for all
that's the
those
thing.
folks.
There's only, I mean, as of today, there's only about 8 more days before this starts.
Yeah.
The 17th. And you're right. I think that's been one issue all along. You're serious, the football issue, because hotel rooms are booked up. They slotted it to begin when they knew there was not a weekend of a home game.
Yeah. I mean, you know, when it comes to War Eagle or War on Mike, people are going to War Eagle. You know, that's just the way it is.
You don't mess with trials in Tuscaloosa and Lee County during football season.
That's absolutely right.
You got to stick them they got to stay where they are.
And as usual, Claire has the last word. You've been watching The V, the voice of Alabama politics. You can catch news stories every day on alreporter.com. Like us on Facebook. Watch us on YouTube. Of course, on your television channels throughout the state. Thanks for watching. See you next week.